Good morning, y'all. It is Coach Candy, and this is Coffee Chats. Grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab your water, grab your juice. Let's rock and roll on this Tuesday morning. How is everybody doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to have you all here this morning. We are going to continue the discussion from yesterday, which is going to be around another piece on how to destroy the noise. It's the I in the noise, which is the inefficiencies you're creating in your everyday activities. And so we're going to talk about how to learn how to say no effectively. I know yesterday we talked about the little baby I being the inability to say no to the things that don't serve you, the things that aren't really yours, so that you can truly say yes to yourself. And we need some tools and techniques to learn how to properly say no, how to effectively say no, so that it's coming from a place of empowerment and not coming from a place of creating conflict or just being, grumpy or whatever with other people. And so I really want to get into that space with y'all today. So welcome, as always. And so those of you that are joining us, just so you know, I go live every morning. We are getting into all kinds of different topics. And right now we're spending a lot of time on how to destroy the noise. The noise really being, good morning, Patricia. The noise really being the negative self-talk filter frames you're creating for yourself. It's that incessant chatter in your mind. It's the monkey mind going crazy. It's all the stories you tell yourself, programming, that kind of stuff. It's also the opinions of others you choose to internalize. It's the I, which we're playing in right now, which is the inefficiencies you're creating in your daily activities, which are two little baby I's, the inability to say no effectively, and the inability to properly qualify and dequalify things showing up in your life, people, opportunities, you name it, shiny squirrel syndrome. The S then is the shoulding that we do all over ourselves. And yes, you bury yourselves in layers deep of that. And you notice how they all connect together, right? It's not like one is usually isolated. They all are playing in a space together. And so the E then is the excuses that you create and perpetuate. And so we are, good morning, Dina. We are really jumping in on continuing to talk about how to destroy the noise, particularly in the I. The next couple sessions, next week, whatever, is going to be around all those inefficiencies you're creating in your daily activities and how it's causing you to deplete your energy, how it's causing you to get jammed up, and it's stopping you from playing at your highest and best level. And so yesterday we really talked about the first baby I in that space, which was the inability to say no to the things that don't serve you. Good morning, Jeff. Welcome, everybody. Happy Tuesday. And so wanting to continue in that space, there was a lot of questions yesterday about, okay, so how do I say no? What does that look like? And so we can't have a conversation around the inability to effectively say no to the things that don't serve you if we don't talk about some tools and techniques on how to say no coming from a place of personal power versus one that's just being, obstinate, just trying to create conflict, just being kind of shitty. That's not what we're talking about. Good morning, Myra. Good morning, everyone. So great to see everyone this morning. So I want to share some tools and techniques depending on situations and help you stand in a space. Good morning, Deb. Really stand in a space to be more intentional. And we talked about that yesterday, right? The power of intentionality. And so this is a big, meaty topic, and I want to make sure I'm not glossing over that. I also want to give you guys space that if you have questions or you have specific scenarios where you're like, how do I say no here? And for example, yesterday, I think it was Melissa who shared, how do you say no in an environment where no is not respected, no is not okay, right? You're in an environment where you're expected to say yes to everything. There are still ways to say no, and you teach other people. And so one of the things I really want to stress when we're talking about learning how to effectively say no and learning how to stand in a place to say, I know who I am and my own personal power is just that. It's knowing who you are. It's getting clear. And if you go back to some of the things that we've done around, managing your day, and if you remember yesterday, I shared unfiltered opportunity for you to take advantage of all that. And I'll share that again today, how you can take advantage of so many different ways to clear out the noise, to build your ideal calendar, to really lock in your focus management. And I'm offering both those programs for free as gifts in celebration of my birthday month for you if you sign up for the Yes Monthly program. So just know that there are tools available for you to do deeper work in this space, because I really want you to have what you need to move that forward. So that being said, one of the things that we go through at length in that program and in some of the training that you'll receive with those free programs is really understanding who you are. And there's, I did a workshop a couple weeks ago that was all on, your clarity, understanding your what, why, and who. And there's another level of it, right? And we got into some of your standards of integrity, which is, what are my core values? And so there's a couple layers of this that are really powerful when you're standing in that intentionality, when you're standing in the space to be able to say yes to yourself, which means then you can say no to the things that don't serve you, the things that aren't aligned for you, the things that aren't connected to your priorities. Is one, really establishing that place to say, who am I ultimately? What are my core values? What are my boundaries? And what are my non-negotiables? And so I really want you to think about those three things and break that down and start thinking about, what are the things that are most meaningful for me? How do I feel I add value? And what, at the end of the day, how do I know what feels good to me in terms of how I get to show up, how I get to serve? So core value space. Then there's what's my non-negotiable? And maybe it's certain aspects of the day are non-negotiable because that's time with your family, or that's time that, you got to get a run in, because otherwise, man, your mental game is off. And I will tell you, exercise oftentimes is one of those things that we dismiss versus make that a non-negotiable and make that an absolute sacred space. Because here's what happens. Your physical activity, your workout, is not just about your physical and physiological, man, I can't speak this morning. Your physical and physiological self. It's also about your emotional state. It's about your mental state. Sometimes it's about your spiritual space. I know for me that when I'm not working out regularly, it messes with my mindset. It messes with my ability to manage stress. It messes with my ability to think clearly and be focused. And so for me, there's sacred non-negotiable space there that I'm not going to allow my calendar to get so jammed up that I take that off. Oftentimes, we think that we get the last of the servings of whatever's left over. And what we don't realize is we have to put ourselves as a priority. There has to be sacred space for knowing how to fill your cup, because you are never going to play at your highest and best level if you're constantly letting people deplete, delegate, dump, all those D words on top of you. And so honoring that says, and I have several people, I have corporate clients that do this. They will block out a certain time during the day that they block it out as private time. They don't put it out there, so it's not up for debate. And it is just a sacred time that is not available for TCONs, which is teleconferences, meetings, whatever. That is a sacred space for them. And every one of us has that ability. So first and foremost, it gets into knowing your core values, having very clear boundaries around what's okay, what's not okay, and having very clear non-negotiables. Until you have those things, saying no is never going to be a game that you're able to play effectively, because you're always going to have people pushing you from different directions, whether it be with shame or guilt or other obligations or things that just keep running downhill. And so I want you to think about that in itself. That container is the first piece that you've got to get locked in, to know who you are, how you want to show up, and how you want to serve. And I know there's things that I keep repeating over and over again, and that's with great purpose, because it's only when we keep hearing the repetition, when we keep getting in the consistent mindset, that we can change the game and actually start to move the dial forward. Because oftentimes we set intention all the time. We're like, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And lip service without action, or intention without action, is nothing more than lip service, right? And so we get all these things that we're like, I'm good at. And what you need to do is start locking in, you are, right? I am. And so it starts with getting really clear about, what do I need in any given day to make sure my cup is full so that I can show up at my highest and best level? Because there is nobody on the planet that is playing at their highest and best level when they are constantly in the space of reaction or reacting being delegated to, being dumped on, saying yes to everything, you're not playing to your highest and best level. And so first, I guess even before the container of who you are, what's your core values, your standards of integrity, etc., first you got to have a real reality check and an honest check to say, what's on my calendar right now that's just a bunch of crap? Because most people have 60 to 80% of their calendar is complete nonsense. It's everybody else's dumping ground. It has nothing to do with what's important to you. And if you go back to some of the stuff that we've done on focus management, it's then getting clear on your three, no more than three, your three priorities. What are your big needle movers for this year? Maybe it's how you're spending time with your family. Maybe it's you're moving the dial forward at work. Maybe it's building a business. Maybe it's, I don't care what it is. What are those three things? And does your calendar match 80%? Because what we need to do is flip that, right? We need to take the 80% that's wasted time and assign that to those three core big priorities or rocks that we're trying to move forward. The other thing is I want you to think about, what is it you want to contribute in the world? What is it that you want to add value to? If you don't know that, because a lot of people say, oh, this is what I want my legacy to be, my living legacy to be. And then they look at their calendar and they're like, there's nothing I'm doing that's connected to that. So again, it's how you want to show up and serve. So that's more of the high level strategies. And so questions or thoughts about that as I'm going through. These are the high level strategies. And then I'm going to give you some ticky-tacky ways to actually say no effectively, because there's ways that you can structure your no. Sometimes it's no period or no thank you, and that's all you got to say. You could say, no, that's not for me. And there's no explanation. And this is something, I know we talked about this yesterday, but I want to really drill this in a little bit more. You don't need to offer anyone an exclamation, listen to me. I really can't speak this can't so clear, let's try that again. You do not owe anybody an explanation, an apology, a discussion, a justification for your yes or for your no. And I want you to really let that sink in for a minute. You don't owe anyone any kind of justification, rationalization, explanation, discussion, or apology when you say yes or no. If you say, yes, this is for me, end of story. Or if you say, no, that's not for me, end of story. What happens is too many times we do the passive aggressive, well, yeah, maybe, I don't know, perhaps. And all that is a slow death to the inevitable no, or it's getting you pinned up against the wall to say yes to something you really don't want to say yes to. So one of the ways that you say no effectively is learning how to say yes and no distinctly and powerfully and with a period. There is no yeah, maybe, someday, perhaps, because all that is muddy water that is creating anxiety for you and the other person, because you're either setting that person up and prolonging the no, or you're half-assing your way in terms of how you're committing and how you're showing up. And you know how we talk about no half-assing anything. It's full ass, both cheeks in. If you're going to do something, commit to it. Commit with your whole heart, commit with your whole being. And if you can't commit to that, don't do someone else a disservice by saying yeah and showing up and not playing full out. You are not serving anybody when you show up with resentment, when you show up half-cocked, half-assed, when you are not playing full out. That is not serving at your highest and best capacity. And it also is part of what breaks down communications and relationships, because that resentment builds over time. That shame, that guilt, whatever was connected to that builds over time. And so I want you to really think about the fact that you are being kind when you tell someone no clearly or yes. Own those spaces and let go of the watered down, passive aggressive, non-committal space in between, because one or both people are going to get frustrated, have resentment, or be pissed off somewhere in that space, because it is kinder to say no directly to someone so that then they can go find someone who can fill that gap, versus you prolonging something that's an inevitable space that eventually you're going to go, no, I really can't do this. Now, if you're not sure and you want to give it time for consideration, this is also a strategy most people don't employ. It's to simply say, you know, I need 24 hours to think about that, or I need some time to think about that. I'm not sure if that fits with everything I have going on. And then what you do is you give a concrete amount of time that you're going to evaluate that and give an answer back when you say you're going to give an answer. If you're like, I need 24 hours to think about this, this is a big request, let me give it some consideration and let me get back to you by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Then honor that person and honor that commitment of how you're going to give your answer. And when you give that answer, good morning, Pat, when you give that answer, give the answer with a complete, committed statement, period, and then no more discussion. For instance, I've had people, and even recently in one of the groups I play in, I get asked constantly to take on leadership positions. And I was the person that was guilty way back in my corporate career, which also added to my burnout, where I sat on every board, every committee, every nonprofit, every charity, every this. I had like 6 different boards I was on. And of course, I don't know how to sit on the board. I got to take leadership positions, right? Because that's my head trash that's going on. So I was overcommitted to the point where I got really resentful about donating my time, because I never had any of my time for myself. All of my free time was tied up with people, other people's stuff, because I was sitting on boards and whatever. I've been asked multiple times this year to sit in leadership positions for a group that I play in, a thought leader group. And several times there's been things I've said yes to that really feel congruent with where I'm at. And there's been other things that I said no. And I've actually said no 3 times. I'm like, thank you. And one of the best ways to say no is thank you for the consideration. No, that doesn't work for me right now. Thank you for the consideration. My answer is no. And I had to actually get very clear to say thank you again, and my answer is no, without anything else. Because it gets to the point where people are going to keep pushing, because we've created a culture where, oh, if we needle it enough, if we just wind in there just a little bit, we're going to be able to convince somebody to say, yeah, maybe, perhaps. And think about that when you're doing that on your side. If you're needling somebody, same thing with your clients. If you're trying to convince somebody to be your client, let me tell you, especially as somebody who went through a shitstorm this year with someone I should have never taken on as a client. So again, knew that, didn't trust my intuition. And it cost me dearly. It was a lot of frustration. We ended up parting ways. It was not a good situation. And I should have never entered it. And I knew that. But somewhere I convinced myself and tried to convince her. And no, I am very clear that it's either yes or no. And I'll give you an example. I had someone that showed up for me once, and we were talking. She's like, Candy, I need to hire you as my coach. I'm like, great. When do you want to get started? Then she kept doing the backdoor, kind of backwards backpedal, whatever you want to call it, where she's like, well, I can't really afford that. And I was like, okay. She goes, well, that's not true. I said, I know. You just told me you got an influx of cash. So you just hold space for somebody, and you're like, okay. Because I'm going to get somebody to their no. I'm going to get somebody to actually say it, because there's power in saying no. And she's like, well, I just don't know if I have the time. And then and I'm like, okay. And I just kept standing there. And finally she's like, well, it's just that you have this level of accountability that's so high, and I just don't know if I can play at that level. I'm like, and there it is. And she goes, you must be really frustrated that I won't commit to being your client. I said, actually, I don't care. And she was like, whoa, ouch. And I said, no, hear what I'm going to say. I didn't say I don't care about you. I absolutely care about you. I hope you get what you need to move yourself forward. Love you as a person. Really, truly enjoy your personality, everything about you. But I don't care if you're my client or not. And she's like, what? And I said, my business is not built on whether you say yes or no. And right here, right now, I am with you. I am giving you all my attention, and I have one space available. When I walk out of your house, and my phone rings, that spot may or may not still be available, because someone will take it, the right person. And so I'm very clear that if it's not a really 100% committed yes, then your answer is no. And I will tell clients that hem and haw with me when they're like, well, and I'm like, then your answer is not yes. What is it you still need that's unclear for you? What is the story, the fear, whatever? Because with the kind of work that I do for people, you need to be able to say yes completely, because you're going to be expected to do some work. You're going to be expected to put the effort in. You're going to be expected to show up and not waste my time. Because if you half-ass that yes, if you don't put a full convicted yes, one or both of us is going to get frustrated in the process. I've seen it too many times. So I'm okay with somebody who's like, well, I'm like, then it's not the right time. Let's touch base in 2 weeks and see how you're doing. I am not going to push someone over that edge when they are not ready to say yes, because yes and no are a commitment that not only are you making to that other person, you're making to yourself. You show up effectively in terms of how you lay either or both of those down. And so I want you to think about that for a minute. I want you to think about, are you honoring yourself? Are you honoring other people? When someone says no to you, you can ask, is it no right now? Is it no to what I'm offering? Or is it no to just in general, you don't want to do anything in this space? Great. Qualify that. It's very easy to say that. You don't need a justification. You're just getting clarity. Is this something we could come back and have a discussion in a month from now? Great. The other thing I want you to realize is oftentimes when we say no, we start with, I can't do that. Okay. What I want you to think about is, how can I? And reframe it to say, okay, well, my answer is no. Is there anything I could offer? And so sometimes somebody will say, Candy, can you do this? I'm like, no, that's not for me. And I do have somebody else that I think would be a better fit. And so I may actually be that bridge to give them exactly what they need, because my no is, you know what, this isn't right for me. And I have somebody that might be the perfect space for you. Let me make an introduction. So I'm bridging a gap to still be helpful where it's not sucking all of my time. So that is another way that you could say no, is with the and bridge, which is, while I can't do this, I can be helpful this way instead. Maybe it's a connection, maybe it's a lead, maybe it's something, or it's, you know what, while I can't sit on your board, I'm happy to review that piece that you just want some insight. Just send that to me with enough bandwidth, and I would be happy to review that for you. I've done that for people, right? Oh, thank you, Jeff. Good, I'm glad this is landing for you guys. The other way that you can say no is, say somebody wants to give you feedback. We love this one, right? And people just take it. And sometimes we're at our breaking point. And one of the worst things you can do is receive feedback when you're already ready to just like erupt and throat punch somebody. The best thing you can say is, not right now, I'm full. Could we do this when I can be fully present with you? And that's another way that you can say no. No, I can't do this right now, because right now I have 14 other things on my plate. My head is spinning. I want to be present with you. Can we relook at this next week when we've got these priorities off our plate and we can really sit down and have a meaningful conversation? Think about how powerful that is. Think about if somebody offers that to you where you're asking them to do something right now, because oftentimes when we make the ask, we are self-imposing a urgency that is unnecessary. And so it winds people up, because we have a culture where we're just reacting to everything. We're like fight, flight, whatever we're doing. And what we don't realize is we have the opportunity to create space. The power of the pause is so critical when you're effectively saying no. Because you can ask, especially when someone's like, and I said this yesterday, when someone says, I need this tomorrow, your first question should be, is tomorrow your real deadline? I'm just saying, that is an absolute way. When someone's like, I need you to turn this around and get this to me tomorrow. Okay. Is this really due tomorrow, or when is your deadline? And someone's like, well, actually I need it Friday. Great. Can I get it to you by Thursday afternoon? Because then I have an opportunity to rearrange things and reprioritize based on what I need and how I work effectively, so that I can still be helpful and I'm doing it in my space, my terms, and I get to create the boundaries and the priorities instead of someone dumping that on me. I want you to think about that. The other one is, if somebody says, no, I need it tomorrow, you're like, okay, so help me understand why this is coming to me now at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday when you need it for 8 o'clock on a Wednesday. How come this is only on my radar now? Well, something unexpected, that happens. However, more times than not, it's because people aren't managing their own business and they're creating priorities for everybody else because they don't know how to prioritize, they don't know how to organize, and they don't know how to do real focus management. And I refuse. I will do a one-off every once in a while to be nice, to do that, helpful if it's a one-time thing. Sure, we all mess up. We all have things that fall on our plate. We all have things that, just happen. Life happens. And so you need space. It's one of the reasons why focus management is so powerful and critical. You need space so that when life happens, you can readjust. And I absolutely refuse to be someone's cleanup when they don't know how to manage their own shit. And I'm just going to be very clear about that. I was clear about that in corporate. I had someone who literally, I left GE, came back to GE, and when I came back, good morning, John, welcome. So I want you to think about, there were times, and so I had an incident when I came back to GE, and I was very clear, I'm not working weekends or nights for this company anymore, because I was working 80 to 100 hours a week, completely burnt out. Most of you know that's where I hit rock bottom, right? And so I had one of my regional managers send me something at 6 o'clock on Friday for a 7:30 meeting with an executive at the hospital on Monday morning. Well, the type of work that I did, I was the commercial ops manager, I was the risk manager. So I did all of the deal negotiations behind the scenes, running the numbers, which back then, which was like 11 years ago, the system took at least 24 hours to run the numbers, to evaluate what we could do from a discounting perspective. So essentially that would mean that my entire weekend was gone. I got back in the office on Monday, and about 4:30, I decided to respond to the email because this was a repeat offender who never managed his business effectively. And he came back and he said, and I said, oh, I'm just seeing this email now. Hope you had what you needed for your meeting. And he was fired up. And he's like, Candy, I had to cancel that meeting. I can't believe you didn't get that turned around. And I said, and I'm guessing that that meeting was on your calendar for at least 3 weeks, because for an executive of the hospital, you don't get a meeting overnight. Those meetings are scheduled 3 weeks out, a month out. So if you knew that and it's been on your calendar for that long, the fact that you waited till 6 o'clock on Friday is not my issue. The next time you want something prepared for a 7:30 meeting on Monday, I'm guessing you'll have it in my inbox by close of business, which is 5 o'clock on my books, close of business on Wednesday afternoon. And he was just like, got silent on the phone, and he goes, okay, received, will do, and never ever repeated that offense again. Here's the thing, we're so afraid to say no because we're afraid we're gonna offend somebody. We're afraid we're gonna hurt their feelings. We're afraid they're not gonna like us. Guess what? Maybe that's true. And you may also, I want you to think about the other side of that equation. You may garner deeper respect. You may teach people how to take responsibility and show up with you effectively. You may actually have people like you more because they know your boundaries, you're clear about them, and it's kinder in that space. And so I want you to think about that. I want you again to think about those executives, those top level executives, those CEOs running their own business. Are they showing up apologizing when they say no? No, they say, no, that's not for me. Thank you. This is my priority and this is the direction I'm going. How can I be helpful in this space, but this is not for me? And when you learn how to effectively and powerfully and intentionally say no, you start to create space and make bigger opportunities to truly say yes to yourself. And so I need you to understand that. We're so worried about the what if game. We're so worried about what if they don't like me? What if they're mad at me? What if I offend them? What if, instead of saying, what if I practice more kindness? It's kind to be clear. It's kind to say no versus yeah, maybe, perhaps, someday. It's kind to say yes, and it's kind to say no. And when you do it from a place of love, respect, compassion, grace, honor, and intentionality, that's when you create real meaningful, deep relationships with people. That's when you create work that's allowing you to play at your highest and best level. And that's when you get to show up and serve from your best place and from your brilliance, your magnificence, and all that. So wanted to bring that back today. Any thoughts, questions as I went through that? Love that there's some new people jumping on this morning. So great to see you all. Thoughts about that, questions before we wrap up this morning's Facebook Live. And while I'm waiting to see if any of you have any comments, again, as a gift, this is my birthday month. So we are celebrating. For those of you that are in the Yes Monthly already, I have some bonuses I'm sharing with you tonight. Facebook Live, 7 o'clock as a Q&A space for those of you in that program. For those of you that want to join right now, and you will also get 2 of my programs as a bonus gift. One is the Jumpstart Your Yes, which is all about going deeper in the Destroy the Noise stuff that we're working on every morning here. There's more tools, there's more of this to really help you say no effectively, show up powerfully. And then I'm also gifting you my entire Yes Ideal Calendar system, which is the tools and the framework you need to create the focus management so that you can start managing your impact versus just watching the clock and managing your time. So awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you. Oh, thanks, John. I appreciate that. Yes, happy birthday, Mark. I appreciate that. And I'm so glad to see you. Wow, it's been a long time, my friend. Hope you are well. So everybody else, hope that is landing and dropping in a little bit for you. Hope you are doing well. If you have questions, again, this is the forum that we want to have these conversations. Send me a message, shoot something on the page. I am happy to dig into these pieces more every morning. You know, we change it up. We're getting into, I want to give you the tools and strategies you need. And so if there's questions you have, if you're not asking them on the chat here, then send them to me. I'm happy to bring them up. Like I said, I know there was just a ton of questions yesterday, so I wanted to make sure I could bring that back and really do some training and provide some tools and techniques on how do you stand in that no powerfully, and how do you do it from a place that says, I'm showing up from love and leading from love versus just being that obstinate person trying to create conflict. So with that, everybody, make it an awesome, terrific Tuesday. I will be back tomorrow at 7:30. We're going to play a little in the Imagine If space, as always, as our Wednesday wonder. And in the meantime, go out, practice saying no. Like I said yesterday, say no to everything first. Give yourself that pause, give yourself that space, and make sure that the yes is really for you before you commit and show up for others. So with that, everybody, have an awesome day. I love you, and I will see y'all tomorrow. Bye.